Stand Up Upstate. I'm Amberly, and today we're going to talk about how the one big beautiful bill is going to affect Medicaid and SNAP, particularly in our area. First of all, do you know the difference between Medicaid and Medicare? Medicaid is for those who are 18 to 64. Medicare is for our elderly. The E at the end, great way to remember the difference between the two. So I'm going to just read some of the changes that are coming. By December 31st, 2026, so of next year, states have to implement community engagement requirements, so that's work requirements, for certain Medicaid enrollees. Starting in 2027, people ages 19 to 64 have to document 80 hours of work a month to maintain coverage, which is equivalent to 20 hours a week. Starting in 2028, states must apply cost-sharing requirements. So these are out-of-pocket payments for services once fully covered by Medicaid. They're also making it a little harder to apply, and that's because they're going to be requiring multiple applications a year. So you're not only not working a whole lot, or maybe you're working 2, 3 jobs. You now have to take time off to go and reapply for benefits again. They are also going to have stricter verifications. So here in South Carolina, though, the largest impact is going to be children, pregnant women, and disabled individuals. My son, when he was born, benefited from Medicaid. That means when he had an ear infection, when he needed his 1 month, 3 month, 6 month checkups, those were all covered. And I didn't have to worry about that on top of having a newborn baby and recovering myself. I myself was on SNAP for a period of time. I suddenly found myself a single mom, and I didn't make enough. And I was lucky because I actually had family who helped me. I didn't have to pay for childcare because I had people watching them. Had I had to pay for childcare, there's no way. I was working a full-time job. I had benefits, and it didn't matter with just one income. I'm not alone in that, though. A lot of us have either been or we know somebody who has been on Medicaid. We know people who've been on SNAP. Because the people who are on SNAP, they are on this program to feed their children. I want you to realize how easy it is to be taken off SNAP as well. When I was on it, I got a 50-cent raise, and that made me no longer eligible for SNAP benefits. At the time, I got $300 a month. This was 20 years ago. It was for 2 people. I went from having that money with a 50-cent raise to having none of it. I didn't end up with any more in my pocket. That 50 cents went right to taxes. So we're punishing people when they're struggling. Again, I was lucky enough to have family that could help me and that would help me. The problem is not everybody does. And not everybody has family who are able to help. It's not sometimes that they don't want to. It's that they themselves are struggling too. So we're kicking people while they're down by taking these SNAP benefits away, when we make them feel ashamed that they need help. And we need to do better. We are starving our children. We are starving those who are older, because it's not just young people that are on SNAP. We have a lot of elderly on SNAP as well. We need to destigmatize that. We need to recognize our fellow human beings for what they are, our fellows, to be lifted up when they're down. So something that is changing with SNAP, there's reduced exemptions. We used to have an exemption for veterans. We don't anymore. People experiencing homelessness, and then there's an addition to SNAP benefits being tied to the consumer price index, which means that the benefits may not keep up with rising inflation. You're going to get the same amount, but now it's not going to go as far at the grocery store. So these cuts are actually going to reduce access to hospitals for pregnant women. 14 counties do not have OBGYNs in South Carolina. We only have 46 counties. That's not great. So we are leaving pregnant women and women in general without care, without basic health care. 60% of children with special needs rely on CHIP. A lot of kids with special needs need certain therapies, and I have some experience paying for therapy for one of my kids, and it was a specialized therapy, and I had insurance, and those therapy sessions after insurance were $725 a pop. So I want you to think about a child with special needs who needs maybe physical therapy. Maybe they need help with feeding tubes. Maybe it's cognitive therapies. We need to realize that these parents are already under a strain dealing with special needs children because they do require a little extra. And if you want to celebrate something, we rank number 6. And that's for the state with the worst health. We're number 6. Yay. We should be ranked a whole lot higher. And we should not have some of the worst health care in the nation. Now I'm going to send you over to Nick, who's interviewing 2 wonderful women from Greer Relief. We have Caroline Robertson, the executive director, and Yvonne McMaines-Thompson, the director of Mission Impact.
Here I have 2 amazing guests from Greer Relief. If you could introduce yourselves, Yvonne.
Yeah, hi, I'm Yvonne McMaines-Thompson. I'm the director of Mission Impact at Greer Relief.
And I'm Caroline Robertson. I'm the executive director of Greer Relief and Resources Agency.
This is awesome. So happy to have you here. Topic for today is we're discussing HR 1. We're talking specifically about its impact to Medicaid funding and SNAP funding. I do understand that those are areas where you provide relief to the communities. Greer Relief and Resources Agency exists to transform neighbors in need to neighbors who thrive by providing services to eliminate poverty and help neighbors overcome barriers for success.
We know, and Yvonne, I'm going to tag you to say, what is it when we need food, we need assistance, what happens?
We were having a conversation the other day. I never stress in the crisis because I always know that the community is going to respond. It's never where am I going to get the things from? That's the beauty of Greer, this community, but they show up in a big way for each other. Here's the issue, and you've got 20 people saying, I've got X, Y, and Z, let's get this done. So Greer is really good at response.
So I'll crack into a little bit of overview of HR 1, what the specifics are in terms of Medicaid and SNAP. On the Medicaid side, we're looking at about $1 trillion in federal cuts over the next 10 years. Estimates of an increased number of uninsured individuals by close to 12 million in the same timeline. On the SNAP side, we're seeing a tightening of requirements and costs being pushed to the state level. And what's really interesting about both of these programs is the participation rules are completely controlled by the state level. So the state can control who gets admitted and who doesn't. And yet we're seeing a push to make changes on the federal level. So what that really equates to is people who want to use the program are being limited, are being given limited access to it. What's particularly interesting about what you said in terms of SNAP is it's a program that can change based on the demand in the country. It has a variable amount of participation and funding, and it's and based on what rules you set for participation. For instance, if you say, hey, people in the lower income brackets are the ones who are eligible, as people experience job insecurity or financial crisis or what have you, more people start to qualify because they become they meet those requirements of, you know, income, whatever it is. The question for the Greer relief side is, what sort of food security services do you offer to the local community, and who is eligible?
Our food assistance is available to our to the Greer community and our neighbors. It is people who need it. So we do not have a financial eligibility criteria. There are some timing to consider. So we are open for assistance Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday from 9 to 1. And then we have a second Sunday assistance day, 4 to 7. And then we also in our off assistance hours, we have what's called food for a day. So we have a bag that if you walk in the door at 5 o'clock on a Friday, you're going to walk out the door with a food for a day bag. So, and then information also is given. So on list of pantries and other options in the community. Now, if you live outside of the area that I listed, you're still going to get a food for a day. You're still going to get that list of pantries. The goal is we don't want you to drive past 12 pantries to get to Greer Relief. We want you to utilize the community that you're from, that you live in, that you work in and play in. We want you to, you know, tap into those rather than drive all the way across the county to come to Greer Relief.
Could you help us understand what like the typical person who comes in to ask for relief, what their conditions are? And I think we'd also be really interested in any personal stories, maybe someone that you've worked with over a long period of time, who you've seen have a change in, you know, a sustaining change in their life as a result of receiving your services. And this can be completely anonymous. Yeah.
Yeah, no. We don't typically keep it anonymous because we want them to shine. You know, it's their story and we give them a platform to tell that story. We ask for their permission, but you know, I've been here 7.5 years or so. But typically the folks that come through the door, you know, education disparity is up there. So that's a pretty huge barrier. And then of course, transportation is the next barrier that you come to. And so now you've got a whole pocket of folks that are very limited by the type of job they can get because they're gonna just rotate between the jobs within walking distance in this area. So their frame of reference is pretty muted. You know, if you can only work at 4 places your entire life, your reference point is going to be pretty specific. And when you start talking about these situations from a generational poverty perspective, you know, now you've got 3 generations, for example, living in one household, and the conversation looks very different in their household versus what it looks like in mine. You know, completing high school is not at the forefront. Doing your homework is not a priority. And then, of course, you know, kids follow their parents' example, not so much what we say, but how we live. And so now you've got the next generation going, oh, mom and dad, or mom or dad or grandma or grandpa is never home. You know, they're working 2 or 3 jobs. I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. And so then that becomes their focus, you know. And so we see a lot of families that are set up that way coming to Greer Relief.
I did pull some numbers from your website as well. I think I don't have the 2023 numbers, but there was something, if I recall, in 2023, you had like, it was like 46% of the participants were new
to me.
Relative to, yeah.
So from 2020 and COVID to what we're expecting this year, it's 116% increase.
Wow. In terms of
in
food
service,
volume?
and people that we've assisted.
Okay. We have to give like a spotlight to always. Hey, these are some slides from the Greer Relief Center. This is the direct impact they're providing to the community, and really give you all credit for some of these stats and numbers, because you deserve a resounding applause from the community for the amount that you're positively affecting us. I think that is huge. I want to pivot into the medical side of things. The approximate $1 trillion that's being cut specifically from Medicaid, federal funding for Medicaid over the next 10 years. It's administered by the individual states. So the states set their own eligibility standards, covered services, and payment rates within the federal guidelines. And each state's Medicaid program determines eligibility based on factors like age, income level, family size. The topic of eligibility and some misperceptions about who takes advantages of these services, specifically with your food assistance programs. There's similar, I think, misperceptions on the national level around Medicaid and who receives these services. So I pulled a couple slides actually directly from Medicaid.gov, but they actually have several slides on the eligibility of non-citizens. And I think the misperception that I want to address here is that somehow Medicaid money is going to people who aren't legal residents in the country. Very succinctly and specifically debunk this from the Medicaid.gov website when they call out it's all catered to qualified citizens who entered before a specific date, qualified immigrants, meaning legal. There is a waiting period even for qualified immigrants. Some are exempt in the case of refugees, asylees, trafficking victims, veteran families, people who may have helped us abroad in dealing with crises or in military conflicts, people who may have fled as refugees after helping us, make positive change in their country. There's no federal funding to cover undocumented immigrants except for limited emergency services, which is, I don't think we want to be in a position where we're having to run background checks and checking ID for someone who's bleeding out on the ER table. Not to get too graphic, but in those type of situations, I think we want to be in a position where we're offering assistance first and then figuring out who's qualified as a secondary process. And then there's another slide here on who is a qualified non-citizen. So we're talking about refugees, lawful permanent residents, battered non-citizen spouses and children, victims of trafficking. And many of these groups are exempt from the 5-year waiting period, but the bulk do have to go through an extended process before they even become eligible for these benefits. So it's pretty interesting to see, and I think I wanted to start with a note of what is the population of people that we're talking about when talking about Medicare, who is receiving these services, or sorry, Medicaid, and who's affected. We're talking about between 1.3 and 1.4 million people are enrolled in Medicaid, which represents 26.1% of the state's population. Mm-hmm. What's very interesting about the number is 2 in 5 Medicaid enrollees, estimated at 45% in South Carolina, are children, which means that over 500,000 children are covered by Medicaid of that 1.3 million. And then there's a small group of uninsured adults. I say small, but it's relative. It's approximately 76,000 adults in South Carolina are in the coverage gap, meaning their income is too high for Medicaid, but too low to qualify for marketplace premium tax credits. So we already have a at-risk population here who doesn't fit into one of our two systems of either Medicaid or marketplace.
When we talk about nonprofit organizations like Greer Relief and historically where their creation came from, when you're talking about government programs that have been put in place like Medicaid and food stamps and TANF, that history and the requirements and how nonprofits like us fill that gap. That's the history of it, is that we were created in an effort to bridge the gap between government assistance and what people could provide for themselves. And I think educationally, when you are trying to figure out benefits and how nonprofits try to answer the call, that might be a great educational tool for the public to understand, yes, we need some guidelines for government programs, but also know when you guys are trying to figure out what those government guidelines look like, your nonprofits like Greer Relief are being called upon to fill that gap. So
yeah, it's the front lines.
yeah.
Huh.
So with food stamps, I heard you say, or SNAP, I'm sorry, I'm old school, I call it food stamps, it's SNAP.
Understood.
EBT. South Carolina historically has the most stringent restrictions or guidelines. I don't know what the proper verbiage is. Restrictions, eligibility requirements. South Carolina by far has some of the most strict eligibility requirements for food stamps. So I think there's some interesting information in there.
I have one other little fact I'm going to slide in here just around the medical issues in the name of education here. Something that people don't realize, like how chronic the medical cost issues are in our country. It's estimated, studies estimate that medical bills contribute to somewhere between 40 and 60% of all personal bankruptcies. Some estimates as high as 66.5%. The point being that one of the leading causes of financial instability or bankruptcy in the country is due to our medical system. And so any avenues we can provide to get people access to care, community care, is going to be huge for our communities. Thank you so much for your time. This has been huge. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Greer Relief as we go forward. And you'll probably see me sometime in the next 6 months volunteering, because this is just such an important organization.
We'd love to have
I was gonna say, I'll see you at Greer Relief for your volunteer orientation, Nick.
Okay, you can count on it.
Awesome. Good to meet you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Caroline.
Day.
You too.
All right.
By 2043, hospitals could lose $2.4 billion in Medicaid funding. This puts 15 hospitals in South Carolina are at risk. And when I went and looked this up, this is in the next couple of years. This is not necessarily by 2043. It means that 8 nursing homes are also at risk to close, because elderly rely on that Medicaid to help them with that, or well, they rely on Medicare, sorry. I need you to sit with that for a moment. We are kicking our elderly out of their home when these close, because they will. Maybe not all 8 of them that are at risk right now, but some of them will. Some of them don't have family to live with, or family who can even take them in. So where are they going to go now? So look, it's just disruption. Even if that nursing home closes and I have to go to another one, have you moved lately? Because you take a lot of stuff with you. Well, when I'm older, I definitely do not want to have to be moving. I'm moving to a facility where maybe my friends aren't going to be that I've made. So that's my community. And I'm losing a lot more than just a place to live. The community I have to move to may not be as good as the one I was in that closed. So it can lower my quality of life as well. There are repercussions for all of these things. And we seem to think that nobody's going to be affected, but we really are. We are going to watch it. We are going to see it, and we are going to be impacted by all of these things. It's coming. And just to give you an idea, there is a nursing home in Spartanburg called Spartanburg's Mountain View Nursing Home, and 100% of their people are on Medicare. I want you to think about something. It's really easy for people to go into medical debt. It doesn't take much. One trip to the emergency room can make it unmanageable, because one trip, it's not cheap with health insurance. As this rolls out, and it is going to roll out over the course of the next couple of years, it was designed that way. You're going to see a reduction in numbers of people who are eligible. So we are going to have more people living in poverty who are unable to get help. More families struggling, more children going hungry, more children and adults going without medical care. Pneumonia can kill you. The flu can kill you. We take these things for granted. But the pneumonia put my dad in the hospital. And I'll tell you what, he didn't look that bad, but his lungs were that bad that if he hadn't gone in, the doctor said he would have died in his sleep. We need to recognize that some of these illnesses that we take so lightly can kill certain people. And of the $8.9 billion in Medicaid spending, and that was as of May of this year, 2025, $6.5 billion comes from federal funds. I met a young lady, I guess this was probably about 6 months ago, and she was filling my prescriptions. And we got to chatting, and I found out that her father is a preacher. I also found out she grew up that way, and that they have heavily, throughout her entire childhood, relied on SNAP, food pantries, and the generosity of others. I know, or have known, military members who are on SNAP benefits. I don't think we realize how many people rely on these services because we don't talk about it. But we need to talk about it. And we need to take that stigma away. I should be able to say to anyone around me, I'm struggling, I need benefits. Or I'm on benefits because it's been hard. And for that to be met with a hug and a smile, at the very least, that's what we should be doing. I know we've covered a little bit of a heavy topic. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, unfortunately. But I thank you for taking this journey with me. I will see you later.